All right, let's dive right in. Today we're tackling something I know a lot of you have been wondering about. How does insurance actually work when it comes to therapy?
Right.
I mean, let's be real. It can feel like you need a whole separate degree just to decipher those benefits.
Absolutely.
But no worries, we're going to break it all down for you with insights from book.
Okay.
It's called Getting Paid, the Mental Health Clinician's Guide to Insurance Coverage and Verification.
That sounds
Yeah, a mouthful, right?
intense.
But she knows her stuff. She's got like
Yeah.
37 years of experience in this field.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, so we're in good hands. The goal here isn't to turn you into a billing expert.
Right.
It's to give you the knowledge you need as someone seeking therapy to understand your options and make informed choices.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
So she starts off by kind of comparing the two main types of insurance,
Okay.
private and public. Most of us were familiar with private insurance, right? It's what you might get through your job or you buy on your own. But then there's public insurance.
Right. Public insurance, that's more like your government programs.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Medicare, Medicaid.
And here's the thing. Each type has its own set of rules and regulations.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's not as simple as just, oh, I have insurance. It's more like you need a decoder ring for each one.
Yeah, it's almost like a whole different language for each one, right?
Totally. And then to complicate things even further within those types, you've got HMOs,
Oh, yeah.
PPOs, EPOs. Ugh.
The acronyms. So many acronyms.
I know, my head's spinning already.
Those are just different plan structures, but they have a big impact
Okay.
on who you can see for therapy and how much it's going to cost you.
So let's break those down a bit.
Right.
What are the main differences between those plan structures?
Okay, so think of HMOs like a club, a more exclusive club. You usually need a referral from your primary care physician
Oh, okay.
to see a therapist.
Yeah.
And you'll have a smaller network of providers to choose from. But on the plus side,
Okay.
they usually come with lower costs.
So more restrictions, but potentially more affordable.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Does that make sense? What about PPOs?
PPOs, those are more like the open road,
Okay.
more flexibility. You don't usually need a referral. And you can even see therapists outside of your network.
Oh, nice.
But here's the catch. Going out of network means higher costs.
Ah, so freedom versus cost.
Yeah.
The eternal dilemma.
Pretty much.
Okay. And then there's the dreaded terminology, co-payments, deductibles, coinsurance.
Yeah.
I mean, these words make my eyes glaze over.
Can I try to explain it?
Please, yes. Break it down for us in a way that makes sense.
Okay. Imagine you have a copay of $25
Okay.
and a $500 deductible.
All right.
So for your first session, you pay that $25 copay. For the next few, you keep paying that $25 until you hit that $500 deductible.
Okay.
After that, your insurance starts covering a larger portion of the cost for each session.
So it's like, I don't know, a video game level you have to clear
Solely.
before you get to the good stuff. Exactly.
Okay, that analogy works for me. So it's not just about knowing if you're covered.
Right.
It's about understanding these little details that could really impact what you end up paying.
Absolutely.
Ward really emphasizes verifying your coverage before you even start therapy.
Yeah.
Why is that so important?
Because it's all about avoiding those surprise bills
Yeah.
and knowing what to expect financially.
Right.
Plus, it'll help you make sure you can actually see the therapist you want because they might not be in your network or your plan might have restrictions on the types of therapy covered.
So much better to be prepared, right?
For sure.
Know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
Okay, let's dive into the different types of insurance, starting with private.
Okay.
We talked about PPOs and HMOs. Are there any other nuances with those that we should know about?
Well, with HMOs, it's important to understand the idea of gatekeeping.
Gatekeeping.
Yeah, so your primary care physician, they're like the gatekeeper.
They decide if you actually need specialized care, like
Right.
therapy.
So it's not just about cost, it's also about
Access.
access, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a really important point. What about the verification process for private insurance in general?
So whether it's an HMO or a PPO,
Okay.
it involves a few key steps. You got to gather your information, contact the insurance company, document everything carefully,
Yeah.
and sometimes you even have to advocate for your rights if you run into any roadblocks.
Oh, wow. Sounds like it can be a bit of a process.
It can, but it's worth it to make sure you're getting the coverage you deserve.
Right, so it's a team effort between you and your therapist.
Exactly. They're there to guide you
Okay,
and handle the logistics.
that's good to hear.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to Medicaid. So this is designed for people with lower incomes
Right.
and families who need help affording health care. What are some of the key things to know about Medicaid, especially when it comes to therapy?
So the big thing with Medicaid is that it's run by individual states.
Oh, okay.
So the rules and eligibility, they vary depending on where you live. Think of it like ice cream.
Okay.
It's all ice cream.
Yeah.
But you have different flavors,
Right.
different toppings.
Gotcha. So checking your state's specific guidelines is crucial.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Does Ward say anything else about accessing therapy through Medicaid?
Yeah, she highlights that therapists can actually often help with the application process,
Oh, that's awesome.
which can be a huge plus.
Yeah, especially if it's complicated.
Yeah, exactly. Having that support from your therapist can make a world of difference.
That's fantastic. Okay, so we've covered private insurance, we've covered Medicaid. What about Medicare?
So Medicare, that's mainly for people 65 and older,
Right.
or for individuals with disabilities.
Okay.
It's divided into two parts. Part A, which covers hospital stays, and Part B, which covers outpatient care, including therapy.
Okay, so Part B for therapy.
Right.
Are there any potential hurdles with Medicare coverage, like restrictions or eligibility criteria?
Yeah, as with any insurance, there are eligibility checks.
Yeah.
And coverage for therapy might depend on your diagnosis and if it's deemed medically necessary.
Okay, so we'll dive into that more later on.
Yeah,
But just keep those key points in mind about Medicare Part B.
exactly.
All right, so we've done private insurance, Medicaid, Medicare. What about those of us who get insurance through our employers?
Right.
I feel like that's pretty common. What does Ward say about employer-sponsored plans?
So she brings up a really important point. Employer-sponsored plans. They're super common, but they also vary a lot.
Okay.
Like a lot.
Like different flavors of ice cream again?
Exactly. You've got fully insured plans where the employer buys insurance from a company.
Okay.
And then you have self-funded plans where the employer manages the plan themselves.
Oh, wow. So even within employer-sponsored plans, there's a whole spectrum.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
What should someone with an employer-sponsored plan keep in mind when they're trying to access therapy?
The key is knowing the specifics of your plan. Don't just assume it covers everything.
Right.
You really need to know what types of therapy are covered, are there session limits, and how much you'll be paying out of pocket.
That's a lot of information.
Yeah, but it's like reading the fine print, but for your mental health.
It's important fine print, though.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so how do you actually find this information? Is it buried in some 50-page document somewhere?
It can feel like it sometimes.
Right.
But your HR department or your benefits coordinator, they should be able to provide those details.
Okay, good to know.
And you can always contact the insurance company directly, too.
Right, they have customer service people who can help you understand all that.
Exactly.
So don't be afraid to ask questions.
No, definitely not.
Okay, good takeaway. We've covered a lot here, but there's one more term that Ward mentions that I want to unpack.
Okay.
Managed care.
Ah, yes.
What is that, and how does it relate to therapy?
So managed care is basically a system to control healthcare costs.
Oh.
And to try to make things more efficient, at least from the insurer's perspective,
Right.
it often involves networks of providers, utilization reviews, and things like pre-authorization requirements.
So balancing cost and quality of care,
Exactly.
which is a tricky thing to do.
It is.
How does managed care usually impact someone seeking therapy?
So a big thing is the difference between in-network and out-of-network providers.
Right, we touched on that a bit.
Yeah, and it's especially relevant with managed care. Seeing an out-of-network therapist can lead to much higher costs, even denials of coverage.
Oh, wow. So choosing a therapist in your network is even more important with managed care.
Yes.
And you mentioned pre-authorization.
Right.
What is that exactly?
So basically, that means your therapist has to get approval from your insurance company
Okay.
before you can even start treatment.
Oh, wow.
They'll have to submit a treatment plan,
Okay.
justify why the therapy is medically necessary, sometimes even provide progress notes.
Sounds like a lot of extra steps.
Yeah, it can be time-consuming,
Yeah.
but your therapist should be handling most of the paperwork for you.
Okay, well, that's good.
Yeah.
So it adds some complexity, but at least you're not alone in navigating it.
Exactly.
All right, so we've covered the major types of insurance and some key concepts like managed care. Pre-authorization feels like we've just scratched the surface.
Yeah.
But it's a good foundation. What's next in our deep dive into the world of insurance and therapy?
Okay, so now that we understand the basics, let's actually get into the verification process itself.
Okay.
What information do you need? How does your therapist talk to the insurance company? What are the key questions to ask?
All right, let's get into it.
Get ready to become an informed advocate for your own mental health.
Okay, so we've got a handle on the types of insurance out there. But how does verification actually work?
It can feel like you're entering some mysterious realm, right?
Totally.
But Davia Ward breaks it down into some pretty clear steps.
Okay, that's good to hear.
And it starts with the information your therapist needs from you.
Okay, makes sense. And don't worry, everything's confidential under HIPAA, right?
Exactly. HIPAA is there to protect your privacy.
Okay, good. So what kind of details are we talking about here?
Well, the basics, of course. Name, age, contact info.
Right.
But they'll also need your insurance details.
Yeah. Like what?
The name of your provider, your policy number, group number. If it's not you, the name of the primary insured person.
Okay.
And what kind of coverage you have, like HMO or PPO.
So it's kind of like giving them the key to unlock your insurance benefits, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
Is there anything else they might ask about?
Yeah, they might ask about your previous therapy history.
Oh, interesting. Like what kind of things?
Any diagnoses, treatments you've received, outcomes. And this isn't just for billing. It helps them get a better understanding of your needs.
Oh, okay.
And tailor a treatment plan that's more effective.
So it's like giving them pieces of your puzzle.
Yeah.
So they can help you solve it. I like that. They might also ask about like specific situations, right?
Right, like if there are any court orders or health conditions that could be relevant. It's about making sure they have the full picture.
Right, to provide the best care. Okay, so you hand over all this information.
Yeah.
You don't just do it blindly, though, right?
Yeah.
There's this thing called informed consent.
Informed consent is crucial. It means you're actively agreeing to let your therapist verify your coverage.
Okay.
But before you sign anything, your therapist should clearly explain how your information will be used, who has access to it, and that everything is HIPAA compliant.
So transparency and making sure you're comfortable.
Yeah, you should feel in control of the process.
Okay, I like that. It's a reminder that you have a say in this. So you've given consent, you've shared your info. What happens next?
Well, your therapist will then contact the insurance company,
Okay.
either through a phone call or, these days, more likely through online portals.
So it's not all fax machines and carrier pigeons anymore.
Thankfully not.
What are some of the key things that happen during this contact phase?
It's about gathering all the right intel.
Okay.
Your therapist will confirm your details with the insurance rep, make sure outpatient therapy is covered under your plan, find out what types of therapy are included, are there any session limits?
Okay.
They'll ask about pre-authorization requirements, if any, and the procedures for submitting claims.
It's like detective work.
Yeah, kind of.
Solving the mystery of your insurance coverage.
Exactly.
Sounds like clear communication is really important here.
Oh, yeah, crucial. Any little miscommunication can cause major headaches later.
I bet. And that's why Ward's so big on documenting everything.
Right, taking detailed notes of those conversations.
Creating a paper trail.
Yeah, just in case.
Better to be safe than sorry, right?
Absolutely. So the insurance company's been contacted, therapist has the info, notes are documented. What's next?
Can we finally schedule that therapy appointment?
Not quite yet.
Okay.
The next step is understanding the nitty-gritty of your coverage.
Right, and that's where things can get tricky, right? With all those terms like copays and deductibles.
Exactly, but don't worry, we're going to break it all down for you.
Please do. Let's shed some light on that.
So after all that verification work, your therapist needs to clearly communicate everything to you.
Okay.
It's not enough to just say, yep, you're covered, see you next week.
Right, there's got to be more to it.
They need to spell out what your coverage actually looks like and what you can expect to pay.
Okay, so it's a conversation.
Yeah, transparency is key.
So those copays and deductibles we talked about earlier, how do those play into the cost?
Well, your therapist should explain exactly how those factor into each session and what you'll be responsible for.
No surprises.
Right, no hidden fees. What else? Are there any other details?
Yeah, what about session limits? Those seem important.
Oh, yeah, those are often overlooked. Insurance plans frequently have limits on the number of therapy sessions they'll cover. And finding that information in your policy can be like a scavenger hunt.
Oh, no, I hate those.
Yeah, the fine print can be brutal.
Okay, so where do we find that info?
Your therapist should be able to point you in the right direction.
Okay.
And explain what your plan's limits are.
And those limits can sometimes vary, right?
Right, depending on your diagnosis.
Yeah.
Some conditions might get approved for more sessions than others.
That makes sense. So what happens if you hit your session limit and you still need therapy? Is that it?
Thankfully, no.
Okay, good.
If you need more, your therapist can request an exception from the insurance company.
Okay.
It's called prior authorization. And while it involves some paperwork and potential delays,
Right.
it's an important option to have.
Like a bonus round in the insurance game.
Exactly.
You've used up your initial lives, but you can try to earn more. What else do we need to consider at this point?
Well, we got to talk about in-network versus out-of-network again.
Right, because that can really affect the cost.
Big time. Especially in a managed care setting.
Mm.
Your therapist should make sure you understand the financial implications of your choice.
It's all about weighing those options,
Yeah.
making an informed decision.
Exactly. And speaking of informed decisions,
Mm-hmm.
how about pre-authorization? We touched on it before,
Okay.
but can you remind me what that is?
So pre-authorization is like getting the green light from the insurance company before you can start.
That's it in a nutshell.
Okay.
They need that treatment plan from your therapist,
Right.
outlining your diagnosis, the approach,
Mm-hmm.
and why therapy is medically necessary.
Okay, so you're basically submitting a proposal
Exactly.
for your mental well-being.
Right. And sometimes they might also ask for progress notes.
Oh, interesting. So they can see how therapy's helping.
Yeah, it's all part of the insurance game.
A game with a lot of hoops to jump through.
Oh, for sure.
Okay, so we've done the initial verification process,
Hmm.
understanding coverage, and tackled session limits and pre-authorization. It's been a lot.
A whirlwind tour of the insurance landscape.
It really has. What else does Davia Ward have for us in this deep dive?
Well, the journey doesn't end there.
Oh, no.
We still need to talk about what happens after you've started therapy.
Okay.
The importance of documentation, the possibility of denied claims,
Oh.
and what to do if you hit those roadblocks.
All right, let's get into it. All right, so we've jumped through all the initial hoops, gotten our insurance verified and everything, but I have a feeling the story doesn't end there.
Oh, you're right. The journey's not over. Once you start therapy, there's still a lot to keep in mind when it comes to insurance.
Okay, so what happens after you've actually started therapy? What else do we need to know about the insurance side of things?
Well, ongoing documentation is super important. Even after that initial verification,
Okay.
therapists are constantly documenting everything. Client info, treatment plans, session notes, communication with the insurance company.
So they're basically creating this really detailed record of your therapy.
Yeah, like a map of your whole journey.
Makes sense. Why is all that documentation so important?
For a few reasons. It's about accountability and transparency. You know, therapists are legally and ethically obligated to maintain accurate records.
Right, especially with sensitive health info.
Exactly, and HIPAA is a big part of that. Making sure your privacy is protected.
Okay, so it's about responsibility and confidentiality. Are there any other reasons for all that record keeping?
Yeah, it also helps your therapist track your progress,
Okay.
identify patterns, and make decisions about your treatment.
So it's like having a logbook.
Totally.
They can see how things are going and adjust if they need to.
Exactly. And Ward mentions something called a verification log.
Verification log, what is that?
It's basically a therapist's system for keeping track of all those insurance details for each client.
Okay, like a master spreadsheet or something.
Yeah, something like that. It helps them stay organized and access info quickly.
So it's a command center for insurance verification. Does it serve any other purpose?
Yeah, it can also help them spot patterns in insurance coverage or denials.
Like what?
Like if they notice a particular company consistently denies claims for a specific type of therapy,
Oh, okay.
then they can be more proactive in addressing those issues or finding other solutions.
So they can use that data to advocate for their clients. That's smart.
Right. Okay, speaking of denials,
Yeah, let's talk about that. What happens when things don't go so smoothly? Why do insurance companies deny coverage for therapy sometimes?
yeah, it can be super frustrating.
Right, because it seems like it should be pretty straightforward.
You'd think so, but it's not always the case.
So why does it happen?
Well, one of the most common reasons is lack of medical necessity.
Lack of medical necessity. What does that even mean? Isn't therapy all about improving mental health?
You'd think, right?
Yeah.
But insurance companies have these very specific criteria
Oh.
for what they consider medically necessary.
Hey, what kind of criteria?
They might require a specific diagnosis, documented symptoms that meet certain thresholds,
Okay.
or proof that you've tried other treatment options and they haven't worked.
So it's not enough to just say, hey, I need therapy.
Unfortunately not.
You have to meet their definition of what's necessary.
Right, this is all part of their cost containment strategies.
Okay, so that's one reason for denials. What else?
Exceeding session limits is another big one.
Right, those limits we talked about.
If you hit the max number of sessions your plan covers,
Hmm.
the insurance company might deny further treatment unless your therapist can make a case for more sessions through prior authorization.
So you hit a wall, but there might be a way around it.
Yeah, exactly. Are there any other reasons?
Yeah, what else could lead to a denial?
Inaccurate documentation.
Oh, life.
Even a small error can cause a claim to be rejected.
So that's why all that record keeping is so important.
Yeah, attention to detail is key. And of course, going out of network can also lead to denials.
Right, especially if your plan has limited out-of-network benefits. So it might not even be about the therapy itself, but about the client's eligibility, right?
Yeah, for sure. If your insurance status changes,
Hmm.
like you lose your job or miss a payment,
Right.
that can definitely affect your coverage. So many things to keep in mind.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
But what happens if you do get a denial? Is all hope lost?
No, not at all.
Hmm.
Denials can be appealed.
Okay, good.
It's not always a guarantee,
Right.
but it's worth fighting for the care you need.
So what are the steps involved in appealing a denial?
First, read that denial letter carefully. Don't just ignore it.
Right.
It'll tell you why they denied the claim, which helps you build your appeal.
Okay, then what?
Then you got to gather your evidence, your therapist treatment plan, progress notes,
Okay.
letters of support from other healthcare providers, maybe even personal statements about how therapy has helped you.
So you're basically creating this big case file for your mental health.
Exactly. And then
What's the next step?
you write a formal appeal letter
Okay.
explaining why you think the denial was wrong and why you should have coverage.
And my therapist can help me with this, right?
Oh, absolutely. They can guide you and make sure it's strong.
Okay, so it's a team effort.
Mhm.
So you submit the letter, and then what, you just wait?
Nope. You got to be persistent.
Okay.
Follow up with the insurance company regularly. Ask for updates. Don't be afraid to advocate for yourself.
Because you have rights as a patient.
Exactly. What happens if the appeal doesn't work, though? Are there other options?
Right.
Even if the appeal fails, there are still things you can try.
Like what?
You and your therapist can brainstorm, negotiate a payment plan, look into community resources that offer low-cost therapy,
Okay.
maybe even crowdfunding if that's an option.
It's good to know there are still ways to get care, even if insurance doesn't work out.
Right, exactly.
So communication and collaboration between the client and therapist are super important.
Oh, absolutely. It's a partnership.
Okay, well, this has been quite a journey.
It has.
We've learned so much about insurance and therapy. I feel like I could teach a class now.
Uh-huh. Right.
Any final thoughts for our listeners who might be feeling a bit overwhelmed by all of this?
I think the main takeaway is that even though insurance can be confusing and frustrating, the more you know, the better you'll be able to navigate the system and get the care you need.
So don't let insurance be a barrier
No,
to
exactly.
taking care of your mental health.
Your mental health is worth it.
That's such a good point. It's not about becoming an expert. It's about having enough info to make good decisions
Right.
and feel empowered.
And remember, you don't have to do this alone.
Right. You have your therapist
We're there to help.
every step of the way. Well, this has been an amazing deep dive into the world of insurance and therapy. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on the deep dive. We hope this episode has given you the knowledge and confidence to navigate the insurance world and get the mental health care you deserve.
Yes, we hope it's helpful.
Remember, your mental health matters.